Today we are learning basketball with Jacob Myers at League Him, an NBA draft account that covers your scouting needs. How you doing today, Jacob?
Great. Best time of the year. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. The draft's right around the corner. The finals are starting this week. It is a really exciting time for basketball. And before we dive into all things draft, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, your perspective. What led to building League Him, and your process, your path to get where you are today. And has League Him opened any opportunities or unexpected experiences for you along the way?
Yeah, so, growing up, I always wanted to be a coach. So I was a student manager in college, started all the way at the bottom, um, and worked my way up, worked for three different coaching staffs, University of Maryland. I was fortunate enough to get on the coaching staff with Coach Willard. Um, and, on the side, when I was a student during the pandemic, I started, I got access to a Synergy account. I was just deep into the film. Like I think I've probably used that Synergy account probably every day for the past 5 years. But I was just deep in the trenches of the film during the pandemic, and everyone's on social media because of the pandemic, and you see the same players get all the love, and I'm like, man, like I wish the game was covered through a lens of like impact and performance rather than marketability. So it was honestly started out a little bit of frustration, right? I came up at a really big time high school in Baltimore, Mount St. Joseph, and you know, Jalen Smith was my teammate, and Sticks didn't have an Instagram account on throughout high school. So we'd go to these big time events, and we were really good. So we could beat a national ranked team by maybe 20 or 25, but the slams, the Boles lifes, all the BR hoops of the world would be posting highlights from the other team because they had bigger followings and they got them engagement and clicks. So I always kind of had that realization in my mind, like there's definitely potential angle here if someone were to cover the game through a lens of like who's actually good, right? Not just who's marketable. And so it started pretty slow. I was just doing a cut up a day. I was just kind of like an underrated college player, whether it was junior college or low major, mid major, and I was really consistent. I didn't really have much expectations. I think I told you this before. I never had aspirations to work in the media. I never had the aspirations to put my name on the work or have my face out there or go on your show. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't something I wanted to do. But it all just kind of compounded. And over the years, I was able to build a good network of coaches, players, agents, front office people, media personnel, and just really cool relationships that opened a lot of doors for me. And 5 years in now, I'm pursuing it and continue to build. And yeah, now it's more draft focused. I'd say the first 2 years or so is really just under radar guys. But over time, kind of my interests went towards covering the draft. So we kind of started just doing like sleepers and, me being a student manager, being a, graduate assistant, my full-time job was basketball with the team, working out with the guys early in the morning. I had to be disciplined to make sure that was my main focus throughout the journey. But, on the side, I kind of would highlight some sleepers, and some of the guys ended up being pretty good. So it built, some trust with my audience. And now as I've expanded to be able to pursue it, now I'm trying to cover, from prospect to pro, everybody, from international to, grassroots basketball to high major, low major, mid major. And yeah, that's a little bit of how I got to where I am today.
It's one of my favorite draft accounts, just basketball accounts on Twitter. So, shout out to you for, staying on that grind and on that path. And I really appreciate that journey. Is similar kind of like goals, I would say, with some of the work that I try to put out as well. Just as you said, just like basketball is a big world, and a lot of people kind of take advantage of a lot of different corners of it when it would be a lot nicer if we could kind of put on display and talk about the best actual talent. Like it should start with the basketball, and everything else should be window dressing, and not the other way around. The way we talk about this game, but definitely, kudos to you for highlighting under the radar guys that need a little bit of love and a little bit of like exposure that way for that very reason. Like it kind of is like this system where it feeds into itself. Like the more followers you have, the more notoriety you get, and it might not match up with the actual impact on the court compared to someone else who, like you say, might be winning the actual games, like yourselves and y'all's team back then. So yeah, I mean, I've just appreciated your account for a while, and it's cool to see it get deeper into the draft ranks and really go full blown. And it's also cool that it's just, as we were kind of hitting on before, it focuses on like positivity, basketball, and being an ambassador of the game, not necessarily trying to just be a hater that gets clicks and is doing it for the wrong reasons. So definitely appreciate what you're putting out that way. And in terms of the scouting itself, is there anything you're looking for, your perspective of when you're looking for the next player to league him or not?
I would say, there's key principles. Like, every scout, every evaluator has, those certain boxes they want to check off. I think we might get into some NBA playoff talk later. I would say, it's becoming increasingly evident that you need a baseline, length, feel, toughness, and character to be a good NBA player. So I think those are probably the things. You look for guys that have growth trajectories, growth mindsets, so that they potentially could have more upside to tap into and more realistic potential to tap into than their peers. I would say those are things. Obviously, shooting, but I think it really comes down to length, feel, shooting, character, and like baseline athleticism. Um, yeah, that's probably the go-tos for me.
Yeah, that's a great succinct way to sum it up. Just like good basketball players, and everyone can kind of define that in different ways. But I agree that it is good all around basketball players that don't have holes, can't get picked on, especially in the playoffs, like you referenced there, where you hold your own on defense, you can hit the open three, but you make quick decisions with the ball. You're not getting stuck on either side. You're not getting exposed on either side of the floor, and just kind of being good enough all around to be a team first two-way type of guy that certain teams covet more than others. But I think that kind of role player works everywhere, and if you're not a star, then finding players around your stars that can play that way, that don't have obvious glaring holes, that's really the goal. And I like the way you sum it up there. So jumping into some of the draft talk, you were at the combine, the lottery just happened. Was there any impressions there? I know you also got to talk to Nick Clifford with an interview. So, what was he like, getting to know him, and, any impressions or favorite fits that after the combine or lottery that you weren't necessarily thinking about a few weeks ago that popped out of nowhere?
I would say, probably tough pop out of nowhere. To the interview part, I've been really fortunate. I think it's probably my favorite part of what I've been doing since I left kind of the college basketball scene. I'm able to, go out to these gyms, go to high school events, go to college games, go to workouts, and, talk face to face with the players and get to know them as they, chase their journey. You know, we've done film sessions with like Nick Clifford, Derek Queen, Rasheer Fleming, Cedric Coward, Jameer Watkins, a couple others. Some really exciting ones coming up this week. I'm excited to put those out. But yeah, I say specifically the combine. It's great. It's kind of like everyone in the basketball world is all in one spot. So like you're able to, if you go to the Marriott Marquis that's attached to Wintrust Arena, you're gonna see probably 100 people in like within an hour that it might take you like 3 or 4 events to see, right? So it's very efficient in just communicating with the people that you know. People call it networking. I would just say like, keeping tabs of relationships, catching up with people. I think sometimes networking can get a bad rap. Like people make it kind of transactional. No, it's just like, relationships matter in every industry, but especially basketball. So I think the relationship piece, able to get a feel for, where guys' stocks are at, teams start interviewing players that week in Chicago. Like you said, you get to talk to the actual players. And then, most of the pro days were in Chicago. Yegor Demon had a solo pro day. Todd Pettiford had a pro day. Handful of other guys. Excel did their pro day. Asa Noel, Alex Condon, Yannick from Penn State. And then to the Nick Clifford part, yeah, we did a film session with Nick Clifford. I've been fortunate to know Nick now for about 2 years and kind of talk through him throughout this process. And, it's cool to see his rise, right? I spoke to him last year after he withdrew from the draft, and he's like, man, it was a really tough decision to be so close to my dream and make the decision to return, right? He could have gotten a two-way last year. He ultimately decides to return to school. They go to the NCAA tournament. They're within a possession of beating a really good Maryland team in the second round. And, it's looking like he's going to be a first-round pick in this year's draft. So, it's cool to see his rise, cool to see his journey. And I think, in, film room type setting with someone like that, you're able to kind of see, their mind, their growth mindset, and how they see themselves translating to the next level.
Yeah, that is definitely the coolest part of these film breakdowns that you get to do, is just getting to pick their brains and see what they're thinking. These athletes are thinking in the moment, like what's their process like, running a pick and roll. How are they reading the defense? Are they looking at feet? Are they looking at screens? Are they looking at hips? Like what is going through their mind to make their read and react decision? And that's highlighted when you're able to break down the granular plays, especially with these players. But that's really cool. You got to talk with Derek Queen and Nick Clifford and all these different prospects. Feel free to plug your other ones at the end here. We got some more League Him film breakdowns coming up soon this week, so definitely got to check those out. But it's just an exciting kind of process to go through, and the I think that element is probably the biggest question mark is the athletes and players mindset, their character, as you allude to before, like getting to know them as a person. It's probably the biggest challenge the front offices actually have, because the basketball has become very available, and you can watch a lot of tape on these guys, you can find a lot of stats on these guys, but getting the actual intel on who they are as people, their work ethic, and what they're thinking on the court is probably the next level of scouting that's really hard to do unless you're putting in the work and you're there in person. You're getting to know them, you're getting to know the people in their life, and there's a lot of like intel type interesting background scouting, I guess, that goes on that might not be as obvious to the fans in general, that think it's just about like what happened in March Madness last month or whatever it may be. So there's just a lot that goes into the scouting process that kind of might not get kind of as as much credit as the actual basketball. Is interesting just to hear the process, and also to how much that factors into the decision making in the front office.
Yeah, certainly. And, we talked about earlier about the different kind of boxes, every evaluator wants to check off basketball wise. The last one I said was character. The character probably takes up 75, 80% of the time for these teams, like you're investing a lot of money, right? You're investing a lot of money in a person. So, they want to know every little bit of information. Everyone in the front office is calling all the different people in everyone's life, and they're all shaping together this one big picture of who this player is on the court, off the court, and most of the time in an organization the player is not on the court. So yeah, it's definitely super important, and yeah, it's something I take advantage of being in the media, where these NBA guys aren't able to talk to the players like you said until May, right before the draft. So they're obviously they're getting information from all the different other sources, but, it's really beneficial to be able to get a read on a player early and develop a relationship and understand the context. Because you can look at numbers and you can look at the film, but unless you understand the context, you don't really have a picture of who the player is. I think that's really important for, tracking a player throughout the season, right? And not like clunking it all together. Player X might have had, a shin injury in January, or maybe they played against a team in the Big Ten that plays zone, or maybe they played, you know what I mean? Like there's different, or maybe they had finals that week, right? you call someone, you're like, yeah, the player was up till 3 a.m. because he had his math final and he was about to fail and be, academically ineligible for the spring. Like there's all these different things. So, you just want to be as informed as possible, and then continue to just keep an open ear and open eye, and always be willing to process more information.
Yeah, the evaluators stay learning, and we all stay learning. That's the whole point of the pod here. Is there's always something more to learn about basketball, whether it's about a
Good
player,
plug.
a prospect,
Yeah.
or a scout. I mean, welcome to learning basketball, everybody.
Yeah.
So
It's
as
a
we're
good
here,
intro right there.
we doing it right here. We're doing it right. So why don't we just hop into our guards only NBA draft, where the 2025 NBA draft is around the corner. we've done this exercise with a few other positions with the wings and the bigs. So why not round it out with some guards here? We're going to take turns selecting our favorite guards as if we were a front office picking guards off the board and we were doing a draft where only the guards are available. And we're just going to take turns going through our top 10. So that should, especially after all these cuts, man, like I don't know if I've ever seen this many players drop out of the NBA draft that to me are NBA level players. I might have had at least 5 first round prospects, like maybe more that I projected for, or I rated as first round guys, another 10, 20 in the second round that have dropped off. Like the depth falling out of this draft is crazy. The NIL landscape is taken over. And I do have some hope that it's, while it might, um, uh, dilute the draft class just a little bit in the short term, that maybe it helps college basketball. Maybe it helps like keep some talent in college and for 2 or 3 years now, like it used to be, because the money is so good and it just makes a little more sense than the unknown of the second round pick of not knowing where you're going to be and having to go to a team you don't want to go to, and the money is probably worse. Like it just makes sense to stay put a little bit nowadays. So anyway, I say all that to say this draft class has lost a lot of depth. There might not be as many guards as there would be if we did this a week ago. My guy Tahad Pettiford, one of my favorite players in the draft, he's no longer available, but he would have been like a lottery guy, late lottery for me. I was just a big fan of his explosiveness. But hey, that's how it works. Maybe next year, Tahad. We're off on the 2025 guards only NBA draft. I'm gonna let League him go first. Who are you choosing with the number 1 overall pick among the guards? Who is the prospect that will be, league him?
Before I make my draft selection, I think that was astutely put by you, with the withdrawals and everything. I actually think, before we go in the guard draft, I think it might be better for the guards long term, because I think we're going to start seeing, like the mega one and done star freshmen, the Garlands, the Irvings, I don't want to put anyone in this class in that light until they prove it, but those type guards, like the top 5, top 6, top 7 picks that demand, like significant organizational investment at 18, 19 years old. And then you're going to have more than Andrew Nemhard types, guys that go through adversity, 4 years, have to learn to play off the ball, play on the ball, and become kind of bulletproof, both mentally and skill set wise. And then I think it'll be more susceptible to long-term success, because I feel like the guys in between seem to be the ones that the NBA spits out really quickly. I mean, you look at the NBA Finals, Thunder and the Pacers. I mean, arguably there's one traditional point guard in the entire finals, and it's TJ McConnell. And he's like widely regarded as one of the most elite minds, elite tough guys in the entire NBA. I mean, the Thunder, I think, are the best team in the NBA. They don't have a traditional point guard on the roster. So what does that say, right? Like, it's really tough for these small guards. What's a small guard? Honestly, like 6'3" and under, right? Like Nolan Traore just measured in 6'3", 6'8" wingspan. It's like, that's solid. Like, that'd be great 10 years ago, but like, it's difficult. I mean, that's a good measurement for him. But first pick, I will go Dylan Harper from Rutgers. I don't think that's a surprise to most that are listening to this podcast. Yeah.
Boom. You heard it here first.
Yeah. I think, the size, the physicality, the craft downhill, the creativity, the instincts, the two-way potential. I think really the only thing you can kind of nitpick with him is, the pull-up shooting was not very efficient at Rutgers. It got kind of a low release. But, when you're picking a big guard like that, who's creative with strong instincts and has that NBA genes, that's a pretty good guy to pick.
Yeah, I mean, a great choice here. I'll even say I would say it should be the consensus number 1, especially in the guards only draft here. I think Dylan's in his own tier as a prospect, and agree with how you put it. And I appreciate how you added to that perspective too of the guards in college ball. That I like how you put that as well. And Dylan's a great pick. I mean, just all around talent, definitely kind of in a tier of his own in terms of just the guards in this class. But I love the just all around stuff he brings. Like he gets downhill, he has that athleticism, he has that tough shot making at all 3 levels. Like he just a guard you can see a team building an offense around and a team around. So we'll see. So with the second pick here, I'm a little torn actually. I've really been high on one athlete here this process, but I've just grown higher and higher on Tre Johnson as this draft cycle goes. So I'm going with Tre off the rip here. Just a 3-point sniper, a tough shot making sniper. Like he can make any shot at any angle. Like his shooting versatility, the shot profile is just second to none. One of the best, most versatile shooters we've seen come out of the draft in a while. And I think because of that shooting versatility, because of his handle, his ability to create his own shot, score from any angle, any spot, and I really have liked his playmaking reads better than some of one might think for like a bucket getter type mindset. I think there's a real offensive engine type guard there where you're getting 20 plus points. Ideally, you're hoping for 30 one day, but that like a star scorer, tough shot maker that a lot of offenses need, and just a walking bucket, just smooth shooter, a real scorer, and I think has enough kind of playmaking feel out of read and react type of decision making where he can be a one of your top primary scoring options as well, who can help the team create good looks and not just be isocentric one-on-one the whole time. So Tre's going number 2.
Great pick. I would, that's a perfect example. You talk about the processing, the playmaking to the context piece, right? So like a lot of people maybe pick apart from his analytical profile the lack of passing or lack of playmaking this season, but context matters. What type of offense Texas had, the players that were surrounding him. So yeah, that's an awesome pick. Tre's a fierce competitor. The scoring instincts, the touch. You talk about being one of the most versatile, 19-year-old shooting prospects we've had in a couple of years. I mean, he's able to kind of shoot from different pockets, right? Depending upon his footwork or the angle. Really impressive stuff. Really a hooper. Big basketball guy. Next pick, I thought you were going to take this guy. I'm going to go VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, arguably the most explosive athlete in the entire class. He's got terrific explosiveness, anticipation, and quickness, which makes him, capable of guarding and, playing much bigger than his actual size. He's kind of one of these Swiss Army knives, and I think something that's promising about him is, tracking him the past couple of years. He's on a pretty sharp trajectory. His handle's improved, his playmaking has improved, his shooting has improved. I think he was about 38% from 3 this year. Was pretty confident by February, March, like it was knocking it down. But then more importantly, I think he's one of those guys that understands like what he is, right? So like he might be able to, shoot threes and be a consistent 3-point shooter in the NBA, but he's someone that's going to utilize his gravity downhill, and he can put pressure on the rim, pretty abundantly. But I think it starts with that defensive upside, someone that can be a real disruptor, and then someone who has, that strong basketball character. I think he's a really exciting addition, and whatever organization ends up with him, in the draft is going to be really excited to try and get the most out of his talent level in years to come.
Yeah, that's a great pick here. That's VJ is the other guy I was thinking about with the second pick, right on, and totally agree. Like the athleticism just feels bankable. Like it's like the blank slate athlete of the draft. Like his athleticism like is clearly going to translate in some way. It's just like how will it scale exactly is kind of the question mark. But he's clearly on another level athletically that for many reasons, like you said, and the defensive playmaking is the big one that stands out. That like weak side chase down type shot blocking, help side shot blocking. He can penetrate the paint with ease. He might not always know what he's doing once he gets there, but I do like how the decision making has improved. I think the feel in a short period just over the season. A little bit of a weird context on that roster as well with the guards that he just kind of a crowded backcourt as well. But I really like VJ here. I've had him as high as 3. He's currently 6 on my board, and just kind of in that 3, 4, 5, 6 range, I guess, for me during this process. But right there with Tre as well. Definitely think he's going to walk into the league as one of the best athletes in the league already. He's shown enough for the 3 ball to believe in real skill development, and the decision making has improved. So like you have a D&3 base, you have like athletic upside that kind of could say that this might be even more scalable from like a pretty good role player base to like maybe there's something else there athletically where he just takes off, and he's not quite the athlete that the Thompson twins are, but that's kind of the idea in my head is like, well, you bet on the athleticism and the ball skills, and can you round out the role and development from there? So great choice on VJ there. There's a lot of good yards here. I'm going with Kon Kneuppel here with the 4th pick. He's moved up my board through this process a little bit. I think everyone's honestly I've seen him kind of drop and then move back up, where he's talked about like high lottery now and could really go anywhere in the draft. I think he'll be top 10 pick by now at the very least through this process. But Kneuppel is more than just a shooter, and I think that's kind of what he gets billed as sometimes. But he's shown that he can be an off-ball catch and shoot guy. He can be on-ball, run some offense. When Cooper Flagg went down with injury, Kneuppel stepped up and was able to run the Duke's offense and run pick and rolls with Maluak, able to orchestrate, run pick and roll, hit the pass, hit the lob man. Really nice touch on his passes and his shots, and makes these like really smart winning plays that you wouldn't necessarily think about, but he's just constantly almost reactively making them. He is known for his getting 2 feet in the paint and playing methodically with the finishing and just his body control, able to like get to his spots and get the right angles for a nice shot or a pass. And he's just like I was saying, he's more than a shooter, and his scalability is interesting as well offensively. I have some worries defensively. That's why I'm a little lower on him as full-time starter, full-time star potential. But I do think that the offense could be good enough where you could round out like a point guard or a shooter who can run some point type of guard, that basically just a very like scalable kind of guy who can play many different roles. Like he can play off the ball, he can play on the ball, and he can probably fit in offensively in just about any context that you need him to, I think is the big takeaway there. So number 4, Kon Kneuppel.
Good pick. Yeah, he's so simple, smart, smooth. Nothing's predetermined. Always making reads, instinctual. He was fun to watch this year. I'll go with Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma. Arguably the most dynamic, when we talk about like fluidity, changing gears, change of pace, him or Dylan probably have the best handle in the class, in my opinion. Dylan's is a little bit more, spaced out. When I think of Dylan's handle, I think of his ability to maybe like go through tight gaps or like spin through tight windows and maintain control as he's attacking the rim. Whereas Fears, he'll really mix you up, right? He'll mix you up on an island. He'll, I kind of, something that really drew me is early in the season, it's like, man, he's transition, like throwing his body at bigger defenders and like able to, manipulate contact. And he has really good balance, super fluid, like I said. And then the creativity and the pick and roll. He didn't actually shoot that well from 3, but, the big time poise and moments, he had a big time shot against Michigan early, going to the left wing, fading away, big time 3. He really broke out in the early season tournament. I want to say that was Atlantis or Bahamas against Arizona, against one other really good team. I can't recall. And he's just super dynamic. Killed it in the SEC tournament. He has that upside, that playmaking juice, that creativity, and then he's someone that is fearless. No pun intended with the name, but he's got that it factor to him. Real competitor, and he's just dynamic. I think he's one of the easier players to kind of watch in the class and be like, oh, he's good at basketball, right? Because it's so much on ball. So I'm very curious to see how his career goes, and that would be a fun addition to my imaginary Swish Theory guard draft.
I like it. That's a great choice here.
Quick question though: is Ace Bailey in this? Like, is this just guards or wings? Like,
we can play the rules how we like. We probably should include it is guards, but if you think Ace can play some guard or some 2-3, we can include a 2-3. I was just thinking the same thing. Maybe like a Carter Bryant could also kind of be on here. Like this should be guard / wings if you if we want to throw Ace in here. But
all right, to the listener, then I'm gonna just disclaimer because I don't want to mess up our draft. I'm not considering Cooper, Ace, and then the bigger playmakers, Yegor.
Yeah, let's just leave Ace off of this
Derek,
since we're already into
let's
it.
just leave those off.
Yeah, we can leave Ace off. He's more of a wing. We're on the 1/2 guard draft right now.
Okay, well maybe I will go Yegor then. Shit.
Yeah, we got some picks left. It's on the table.
I'm gonna surprise you with my next pick, I think.
All right, I like it. I might. I mean, we'll see. I like Fears here. That's a great choice. Definitely that quick first step burst. He can get to the paint at will. Incredible, like handle, just drawing fouls, finishing at the rim, and that an all-time shot, as you referenced, with that like step back buzzer beater at the 3 earlier this season. That was like a moment. And honestly, I think it was such an open draft at the time that he had some top 5 buzz around that time because of how well he was playing. And he's kind of hit reality a little bit since then, and maybe fallen a little bit, but. Fears is a super exciting player and just a lot of fun at Oklahoma. Walking bucket, can just orchestrate some offense and get to the rim at ease. Kind of plays beneath the rim a little bit, but just absolutely explosive first step burst that really, really could kind of keep the offensive moving, just able to penetrate the paint and kick and score himself and orchestrate and run some offense. So like a real guard that, an offense could use, like, Orlando could use somebody like him, even if, I don't know where his long-term potential lies. But with the next pick here, we got the 6th pick in the guards only 2025 NBA draft on the official Learning Basketball Swish Theory podcast. I'm going with Walter Clayton. I'm going with the champion 3-point shooter. He had an all-time March Madness run here. There's a few other guards I could go with here, but something about that shooting gravity is just kind of sitting with me. That obviously it was on display in March Madness. Don't want to overrate like one run like that, but I don't think that is as much of this as much as just putting on display how that shooting gravity can work when it's hit. And having a high volume 3-point shooter who can run on ball or off ball, use that shooting gravity to stretch out defenses. It's just modern offense in a lot of ways. It's what I want from the guard, especially just someone who can relocate and hit the 3 on and off the ball, who can run some offense. And I thought he was just fully on display. The biggest winner out of March Madness, obviously, the NCAA champion after that. So congrats to him. And another guy, we are officially in, I hope Orlando takes one of these guards section of the draft around the 16th to 25th pick. They got 2 of them. They need some guards. They just need somebody that can hit the 3 to start with. That would be nice. So I'm going to go with Clayton here. You're up at the 7th pick.
I like the pick. I watched him work out a couple weeks ago. Man, he's one of the more dangerous shooters I think I've seen.
I imagine watching him shoot is just like just like nothing. He just makes it look easy.
It's like you always want to be careful with the workouts, right? Because being on a college basketball staff, it's funny. Like whenever like an NBA big man workout goes viral in the summer, and all the fans are like, "Oh my goodness, he added the 3-pointer to his game." I'm like, man, we had 3rd string centers cashing 3s in workouts every single day. Like
Dwight Howard adding the 3-point shot this year.
Like it's so much more timing, ability to process, shot prep, like with real speed. But it's a little bit different with Walter because he does it in the game. Like you said, like his ability to just pull the trigger at any moment, like 30 feet in, 32 feet in, really impressive. And then we talk about guys that grew throughout college, right? 2 years at Iona with Rick Pitino, one of the best coaches in college basketball, spends 2 years at Florida, is one of the more dynamic guards in the country. I think he's adaptable. I think he can play on the ball, off the ball, and I think he's really tough. Obviously, his poise, his competitiveness was showcased throughout that run. That's an awesome pick. I'm going to throw it for a spin. I want to also throw a disclaimer. I don't want any angry DMs on this. I'm kind of just picking players off of who I want to talk about at the moment. I'm not exactly. We're not submitting these lists to GMs and executives across the NBA. I'm gonna go Will Riley. with my next pick
Oh,
from
wow.
Illinois.
Okay. Let's talk a little Will Riley.
I think he's one of the more intriguing upside swings in the draft. Just the size, the very unique frame. I watched him at Hoop Summit practice against, the best guys in this year's draft last spring, Nolan, Kasparis, AJ, Dabansa, VJ Edgecombe, Cooper, Ace, all the top guys come on. And I'm like, man, like I don't know how he's exactly gonna fit in the Big Ten with this frame. Like he's really struggling in those practices with physicality. He was really struggling to get to his spots, get downhill, beat a second defender, defend. And then you watch him throughout his freshman season at Illinois, and man, the progress was really promising. I think he showed a real competitive edge. He got stronger. He has a really good feel for the game, and then the instincts as a scorer, the touch he has. I think he's just a really intriguing prospect. 6'8", pretty good pick and roll passer, very comfortable creating off the dribble. I think there's some intriguing upside to tap into there long term. It's just going to be a matter of how much he can really maneuver with that frame, how much he's able to get functionally stronger, and then what the role type is. But we talked early this at the onset of the show about those traits that I'm intrigued by. So when I see someone with that level of feel, positional size, shooting, and then the trajectory of like a real competitor that just continues to, work on his craft and make real strides, that's someone that's definitely piqued my interest. I think it'll be team dependent. I think he needs to be invested into by whatever team he goes to, but I wouldn't be surprised if he went higher than people expect. And then I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up having a really dynamic career because of those traits, and the foundation there is really promising.
Yeah, he was really high on some of the impact metrics for a while as well. On like BPM had him super high for like half the season. I'm not sure if it came down a little bit, but it was an interesting context. Like a small role for most of the year. Obviously, played with Kasparis at Illinois, where Will was coming off the bench, and then they kind of like switched roles a little bit, and he got more opportunity. Kasparis lost a little bit, and Will kind of took over a little bit more. So that it's super interesting. Definitely. I agree. He is kind of like a high potential, like I don't know if it's a high reward, high risk, but something there where it's a gamble that is probably worth taking later in the draft to just see if there's something there. He's one of the few talents that stayed in the draft, and like he checks off a lot of boxes, as you said, that just kind of make it worth taking a swing on a guy like him. And I could talk about his teammate here, but I'm actually going to go with Jace Richardson here with the 8th pick in the guard draft. Jay Rich's son, obviously, got to see him in person back when Columbus played Mount Verde a few years back, and the Boozer Flagg, like a big epic showdown. So that was pretty cool to see Jace up close. Didn't know a ton about him going in, but came away really impressed by his touch, shooting touch, just like tough shot making, could pull up at like the elbow for like a floating mid-range jump shot that was nothing but net. Obviously got some good tips from Pops helping him with that shooting touch. But a lot of people really like his defense as well, that he's a sound defender who can hit the three, but can also score a little bit off the bounce. Intrigued there for kind of just his two-way impact and how high that two-way impact can come. Will he be more of like a D3 type role guy, or can he kind of round out maybe a starter level role as a plus defender, a plus shooter, but can actually score a little bit too, and becomes maybe a starting level shooting guard down the line? But at the least, it seems like there's a pretty high floor of a role player, two-way guy that can defend, hit the three ball, score a little bit, and also makes good decisions moving the ball, I think.
Yeah.
And you're up then with the 9th pick.
So this is my last pick.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Yeah, Jace is an interesting one. I mean, 6 foot, right? 6'6" wingspan. You can tell he's the son of a 2-time NBA dunk contest champ. He kind of is so graceful the way he covers the ground and attacks, very smooth, really fluid athlete. I'm intrigued to see where he goes, not only draft selection but team, and kind of see how he develops. Very unique player. Could go a lot of guys here. You talked KJ from Illinois. pick and roll maestro, crafty, tough, good physicality. Could go Nolan, French point guard, blistering speed, elite burst. Let me not steal your picks, but
No, you got it.
I said before I wasn't going to take Yegor or some of the bigger guys. Could go, you
go whoever you want to talk about. Yegor is on the table. If you have any updates for him, or I know he's pretty polarizing.
Yeah, Yegor's polarizing. I'll go someone I think who deserves a little bit more attention and really benefited from the mass withdrawals, and that's Javon Small from West Virginia.
Okay.
Real feisty, experienced guy who developed at Eastern Carolina, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. Really tough, great frame. He's kind of built like a football player, but then he kind of will surprise you with his skill level, right? Like his handle's really tight. He can shoot it. He's got some creativity. And then in the pick and roll, watching him live this year, that was something that really popped at me. His timing, his touch on passes, his ability to, manipulate the tag. Then he rebounds, he guards. I actually was preparing for an upcoming film session last night, and I was watching their second game against BYU, and he's drawing charges, beating guys to their spot. I think he's someone just kind of an intriguing sleeper for people to keep an eye out on. Probably doesn't get as much attention as some of the other guys we talked about, so I thought it's worth amplifying him. And like I said, really benefited from the withdrawals. Talk about Tahad Pettifer that withdrew, someone that gets drafted. Whatever the range is, he would have gotten drafted. LeBaron Philon for me was probably the one that
another one.
I would have drafted him in this draft right here. I love talking about his game. The fluidity, the deceleration, the processing, and then it's kind of rare you have a player that's so good off the ball yet undependable as a shooter. It's kind of a interesting contrast, right? But it speaks to his incredible instincts and his ability to play. So, yeah, really benefit from mass withdrawals. I think he'll get drafted. He's just a tough dude. It's a dying archetype, but I think his gritty two-way playmaking deserves a little bit more attention.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I'm glad you gave him a little exposure here in the cards only draft, and totally with you on Philon too, man. That was one of my guys. Just a winning player. Like I know I had him lottery at one point, maybe late teens or something by the end of the process, but like clearly a winning player. Like every time I would watch Alabama, I would be scouting kind of someone else, and then I'd come away thinking, well, Philon just made like 5 winning plays while I'm here watching somebody else. So I'm gonna have to keep note of this guy, and he just did it every game. Like he just is a hustler out there. He does the little things, like very much a two-way winning impact type guy. And like you said, like has glaring flaws in his game with the shot as well, but he still impacts winning and does so many things right that any team would want him in the rotation as just a two-way team first type winning player. In terms of the big board style, I would definitely have Kasparis here with my last pick, and you hit on, and I think most people by now are probably pretty familiar with his strengths and weaknesses. That at the very least, like he looks like a pick and roll guy. Like he can run pick and roll. He has the step back three in his bag as a go-to move, and he has some interesting footwork, gliding, finishing at the rim. Is he an oversized point guard? Is he like a small forward? I'm not exactly sure. I'm a little worried about the defense, and I'm a little worried about the off-ball catch and shoot 3-point shot as well. But I do think he's a guy that would rather have the ball in his hand, and he can. I do think he'll be at the very least a 6-man type pick and roll guy that can hit the 3 ball, run some offense, and do it as like a tall guard or a small forward type from maybe the 3 position defensively as well. It's kind of how I view him. But also wanted to shout out Cedric Coward in this process. I don't know if you have much thoughts on him and kind of rising through the ranks here. I made this little graph yesterday that might as well pull up here just because I feel like it's my podcast. Why not? I can pull it up. This was playing around with some defense data and combine data. I got it just the draft class year, and I brought it up for Cedric Coward here on the right side. So we're looking at wingspan to height ratio, like a plus minus. So these 3 on the right, mean their wingspan are almost 9 inches longer than their height. Thomas Sorber, Rasheer Fleming, Cedric Coward. So you can see why Cedric Coward has shot up draft boards during this process when he's 6'5" with like a 7'2" wingspan or whatever the heck that comes out to. And then the vertical side of this graph is defensive activity without fouling. So stocks per foul, steals and blocks added up, divided by fouls. Ryan Kalkbrenner's ratio jumps off the charts. That's why he's so high. But Thomas Sorber, Cooper Flagg, Johni Broom, also very high. Yegor Demon, also, sneakily up there. VJ Edgecombe, pretty high up there. The size of the circle is their weight as well, to try to show like how big of a defensive presence they are. So just kind of was playing around with some defensive data and wanted to shout out Cedric Coward just at the end of this draft. And, if you notice anything interesting, feel free to give it a shout. But did you have any thoughts on Cedric Coward through the combine process, or just the last few months, kind of his rise through all these draft circles?
Yeah, I'm not a big receipts guy, because I feel like, you're supposed to be right? And it doesn't really matter if you're early, right? For NBA teams, like, you just need the information by draft day, right? Like, you want to be right on draft day, not the year before. But I will say, I interviewed Cedric last year as a part of our watch list series, where we try to amplify, some guys that might break out as NBA prospects. We talked to him, Nick Clifford, Yaxel, Rasheer Fleming, guys kind of in that mold, some of the guys on this graph. And I'll be honest here. I mean, I've interviewed probably 150 players the past year. He's been the most impressive interview I think I've ever conducted. His maturity, his self-awareness, his ability to process the game and communicate what his strengths are, his weaknesses, and his growth. But you talk about the buzz of the combine. It was kind of funny. It's like you're turning your shoulder in these gyms and in the hotel, wherever, and like you just hear people talking about him. Like it was like legitimate buzz, like buzzing like a bee. So yeah, I think the interview process has really helped him. I think that's why the buzz went crazy. He shot it well. He's recovering from a shoulder injury, so he wasn't able to play in the scrimmages. I did a film session with him the week before the combine, and he's like, "Man, I would kill to play." Like he was like going up and down in his chair, like man, I would love to play. Like, but yeah, I think with him, another thing, we talk about, this is awesome visual, by the way. I want to talk one sleeper on here after we talk Cedric.
Appreciate it.
But the trajectory is something that is incredibly appealing to NBA teams that are looking for someone that could, continue to grow. So, 0-star recruit out of Fresno, heads to Willamette University, which is a Division III program. And he kind of played more in the front court, right? He's running the floor hard. He's utilizing those physical tools at that Division III level, working for angles in the post, ducking in, sealing, rebounding, wreaking havoc on the glass. Develops there as one of the best players in Division III basketball, transfers up to Eastern Washington, Coach David Riley. Solid sophomore year, junior, makes a jump, becomes more efficient as a shooter, starts to evolve his handle a little bit, starts to evolve the decision-making, just really making strides. And then this season in Washington State, he actually tested the waters last year in the draft. He did some workouts, did pre-draft in LA with his agency. So he was on the radar of certain teams already. Plays 6 games this year and gets injured. In those 6 games, I want to say he's either 50, 40, 90 or pretty close to it. So his analytical profile is juiced from those 6 games. He's rebounding at a high level like he always has. The intensity is always there. But now the intensity and the effort and the character stuff, the skill level is starting to reach that. So I think he's one of the more enticing. He's kind of like the man of mystery in the draft. If you want to learn more, shameless plug, go watch our interviews with him on our YouTube. But yeah, super, super appealing. I think a fit that kind of pops that would be interesting would be like Washington Wizards, because I think he fits within that locker room. I think he fits their timeline. And then I think he'd get, some valuable reps to just continue to develop his game, because I think there's still a lot there for him to work with. He's still only 21 years old, despite having 4 seasons in college. And I think he's someone that's going to work tirelessly to maximize what, God gave him. But the other name I would say on here would be Elijah Martin, another national champion, made it to the Final Four a couple times in his college career, played for Dusty May. You know, he's only about 6'2", 6'1", but that wingspan, the toughness, the anticipation. We talked about VJ playing much bigger than his size. I think Elijah Martin is someone that is kind of a popular sleeper in the second round for teams because of that competitiveness, because of the versatility. He played at Damian Lillard's elite camp 2 summers ago, and I'm getting all these calls like, "Oh my gosh, Elijah Martin's the guy!" Like, his mentality, his preparation, his professionalism. So he has a lot of fans. I think he's someone that kind of pops on this graph. And Vlad Golden, who also played for Dusty May, I think is someone who benefited from the mass withdrawals, potentially get picked, 30s, 40s. And then Duke the Arrow, Amari Williams from Kentucky. I really like this visual.
Hey, appreciate it, man. I was playing around with the data last night. Also a fan of Lag Golden. I think I'm like I'm the guy that's way too high on Danny Wolf because of those pick and rolls between him and Golden. Like I think it's very translatable to the next level, and like that's the proof of concept right there. Is like Golden just is a natural rim roller, rim protector, pick and roll, strong, tough, big man, traditional type guy, and just very what you want especially as like a backup center in the second round, looking for value, high impact rotation players. Like he definitely seems like he could be a role guy, and I appreciate it. So I made this in Tableau and found a bunch of data, just playing around with some of the combine data and some of the stats, trying to find the most active defenders. Like the defense is still that last frontier where we just don't have the perfect equation figured out to measure defense. So I try to think about like hustle stats. And to me, the most important stat from the combine to me is this wingspan height ratio, like how much longer your length is than your height. And something about that ratio tends to lead to good defense, where we just see it time and time again that is a factor for defensive activity to help force turnovers. Because I think forcing turnovers is the most valuable defensive skill and one of the most valuable things to help create easy offense for your team. So that to me is really where I guess I value defenders, is who can force the most turnovers without fouling, and then who has that length athletic base where you kind of know the length is there if they're forcing turnovers without fouling. The cerebral mind is there as well, and combine like someone like Thomas Sorber jumps out obviously on this draft because he's got a +9 wingspan as a big man, and he's second in among all prospects in steals and blocks per foul. So he's racking up steals and blocks. He's not fouling, and he's huge. He's like one of the biggest by weight, by height, by length. Like that really stands out to me as just like something of a defensive anchor trait, like just what you want to see in a smart defender. So, and obviously Cooper Flagg is just top of the charts and on every chart you look at. So that's how Flagg does it.
Another dot that is enticing, I think, is Johan Berenjay, because he's only played about 3 years of organized basketball. So for him to be at that level, you'd expect him to be committing a lot of fouls, right, as the game slows down. So I think that's one that's really intriguing to see. Like, all right, what does he look like in 3 years, right, when he's more comfortable with the speed of the game? He his measurements will come out today from Treviso, but like he's got really good physical tools, super fluid, bouncy, springy, great second jump, can kind of cover ground. That's another one I think that's appealing. And then with you on Wolf, I don't know how high you're on Wolf. I kind of have tried to not base my rankings on like what the people say consensus, like what really is consensus, right? Like everyone has their, like no teams are like, I guess people want to get a gauge for like teams want to know what other teams are interested in. I guess that's valuable. But as I've tried to start covering, like when we started doing the big board, I really tried to like shut all that out and just trust my eyes, trust, the intel and stuff. But I think Danny Wolf, obviously the playmaking, right? The handle, the step backs, the pick and roll pull ups. I think someone that really stood out for me once I liked him throughout the year. He really popped. He was good at Yale, played more of a big man role, a little bit more post touches. I saw him live in the Big Ten tournament, and I'm watching him go in the trenches versus Purdue on the glass, and his feel and his timing for, grabbing rebounds and, bringing the physicality. His hands are huge. I think he has really good touch. I think he's someone that's really intriguing. When you start looking at some of the teams in the mid first round that could potentially utilize that skill set, because it's weird where usually, especially with the younger prospects, when you're in the pre-draft process and you're envisioning them at the NBA level, usually the more common argument is, well, they weren't in a great position, they weren't amplified the right way, and you're trying to imagine them positioned better at the NBA level, whereas Wolf was probably presented and utilized in the most optimal juiced role possible by Coach Dusty May at Michigan, with the utilization 150 plus pick and rolls. He was primary ball handler most games. So yeah, I'm with you. I think he's definitely a really intriguing prospect.
Hey, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here with Danny Wolf, man. I have a lottery as well. So I did my big board in tiers. So I kind of have 3 through 13, the whole lottery after Flagg and Harper in the same tier. But I have them in that tier. I have them third overall for upside because of everything, kind of what you just said. Like I just think he has the potential to be an offensive engine at the next level for a team, a half court playmaking hub where playmaking for centers has become a vital skill. He not only could be a handoff hub, a post-up hub, but he can actually run pick and rolls, inverted pick and rolls, running from the perimeter. J. Kyle Mann threw out a comp to Hedo Turkoglu the other day, and I'm a huge Magic guy, so I was like, man, I kind of like that. Just this idea of like a fringe 7-foot point forward type who might not bring much defensively, but he can really orchestrate the offense. And I say that, but I'm talking about Hedo with that. I was actually impressed with Wolf's defensive mobility, his footwork on the perimeter more so than down low a little bit. So, he might be more of a 4 defensively, which means you probably do have to pair him with like a a natural 5 rim roller, rim protector. And the defense is something of a question mark. Like the athleticism is not obvious. It's not glaring like some of these other guys, but there's just something special about his feel for the game. Like the idea, like you said with Dusty May, like he trusted him to run pick and roll offense consistently for this team as the main point guard at 7 foot. And he did it consistently, sustainably. I don't have them in front of me, but the synergy ratings are really high, efficient play types for his pick and roll, his just his ability to run pick and rolls, including passes, post ups, including passes. I love his mobility, his footwork, his grab and go pace that he plays with, the handle. He like for his size, the handle is really impressive. The passing, the vision is insane to me. He is turnover happy. Like he will try stuff that doesn't work. He'll make bonehead plays. Like it is like watching an aggravating like gunslinger quarterback at times where like it's super exciting 90% of the time. And then there's like 2 passes where it's just like, what the heck are you thinking? He's just trying to make a play, but sometimes you hope that stuff kind of, develops as he goes, especially with more touches, more reps, seeing more different schemes over years. And I think the big thing is just like, if a team drafts him, they really have to kind of go all in on running the offense through him to actually utilize his skill set. If you stuff him in the corner and tell him to be a D3 center, you're not going to be very happy with the results. If you like run the ball through him as like a point forward who can run some pick and roll on both ends, who can even just be a connector, who can hit the open 3 and just kind of really like his potential. I think at the end of the day is why I have him so high, is that I believe that his upside is what I would bet on the most for an offensive scoring creator. Like if you told me he's the best offensive engine 5 years from now, that's kind of the bet that I would be making by taking him high and also trying to run an offense through him. But I would also say all that to say, like, potential is not guaranteed. It is a risk, and you're taking a chance that on a prospect who is not the most scalable. Like I think is kind of the risk that the defense is a question mark. The athleticism is a question mark. How he scales into an off-ball smaller role is a question mark. And that's why I, you should be hesitant and think about heavily. Obviously, it's a big decision for an NBA draft, but that's where the debate comes in, is like, is the risk worth the reward? And to me, in this class specifically, especially if you aren't too, high on a lot of these other prospects as stars, I think at the end of the day, you can pretty much talk yourself into whoever you personally want for your team. I don't even know, through the top 20. Like if you said, with the third pick, Philly took Kasparis Yakachonis, would you be absolutely like blown away, shocked if they took VJ Edgecombe, if they took Ace Bailey, Derek Queen? I mean, you could go through the lottery, and the point of that is, I think, as you were hitting on before, that consensus is very important for determining value in the draft, but it doesn't actually mean you have to like rank players the exact same way, or else this whole thing would be pointless. Like, there would be no draft process if we all thought the same exact thing all the time. So having different opinions is what makes it interesting. And I also think consensus can be helpful. Like, the most important part of forming my draft process over the years is just realizing that you don't know everything, and that other people's perspectives can really help kind of round out what you see and kind of help fill in the holes of your process, where maybe I know I was lower on a handful of guys to start this process, but through the work of others, like on the Swish Theory team and friends in the draft community, I get my eyes open to guys in different lenses, that you can kind of see the glass half full on guys that you might be glass half empty on, just based on the random 3-game sample that you caught versus the 3 games that they caught. And that's just how it goes. I think everyone has to remember that everyone views these prospects differently. Everyone has a different frame of reference, different perspective, different eyeballs, different goals, different idea of what a good player is. And everyone's just kind of views things differently. And knowing that can be helpful in kind of forming your big board to take in all the possibilities, round out your perspective, and still kind of prioritize what you think will translate to the next level. So I would say, like, most of my board is probably pretty chalk. I'm definitely higher on the front court in this draft. I think that the bigs of this draft will be how we remember this class, between Flagg, Wolf, Noah Senyu, Asa Newell, Kaman Maluak, Colin Murray, Boles, Derek Queen, Ace Bailey if he counts, Thomas Sorber. Like, I think that will be the group where we see some stars pop out down the line, if anything. But that's the draft. You never know for sure, and we could just as easily have a few guards jump out. This is the guards only draft. We're looking at Dylan Harper, Tre Johnson, VJ Edgecombe, Kon Kneuppel. Any of these guys could pop out and end up being a star one day. And it really comes down to the buzzwords that we've hit on probably this whole podcast, like the situation, the opportunity, the role, and just the investment from the team behind them. So super high on Wolf for all those reasons. And I could be just have egg on my face in 5 years, but that's the part of the draft process. Like, you no one is going to get it perfect. There is no completely right answer. But you put in the work, watching the film and looking at the stats and talking to people and comparing perspectives and processes. And that's how you form the big board.
Yeah, certainly. I have a couple follow-ups to that. First off, you talk about, conversing and differing in opinion. Outside the film sessions and probably watching games live, I would say my favorite thing is just arguing on the phone with scouts. Because, right, like that's what front offices do, right? Argument, I'm kind of using that, I'm stretching the meaning of that. It's not anything with malice or any negativity, but like, you want to check your blind spots, right? Like, everyone has a different perspective. Everyone has different foundations they're trying to build from. And then I'd say off of that, I think sometimes the argument of like best player available versus fit, it's like, I don't think it's that black and white, because there's certain players that are going to flourish in different organizations. I think a big thing in the whole pre-draft process that doesn't get talked about enough is when the front office starts showcasing the player to the coaching staff. Like, does the coach want to coach him, right? Like, if you have a lottery pick, like, you got to make sure the coach wants to coach that player. So if there's habits that rub them the wrong way or tendencies on the court that they don't like, That's really important. And then with Wolf, I would say, yeah, super enticing prospect. I think for me, the worries would be, defensively, I thought he got blown by a lot. I think his biggest struggle in the NBA would probably be like the scrambles, getting caught in the mud, just from his athletic limitations. He does have really good hand-eye coordination that obviously shows offensively. So he's able to get a hand on the ball. He was rated pretty well in your visual. But yeah, it's interesting whether you're kind of weighing, we talk about fit, we talk about best player. If he's empowered in some sort of to utilize that feel offensively and then off the ball around better players, he can knock down a catch and shoot, make quick reads, rebound, and hold his own defensively. You're looking at, a pretty valuable player. And, most guys drafted outside, most rookies don't play in the NBA playoffs, right? Like they just don't. Even high picks. I mean, Rob Dillingham was the 8th pick in the draft, right? 8th. He didn't play in the playoffs really. Shannon had like 1 or 2 games, and he was seen as, like ready to play, plug and play. Like it's really hard to get on the floor in the NBA. So you got to be a really good player, and you have to have an adaptable skill set, both mentally and physically, to be able to impact winning and be someone that people want to be around in a team construct. But yeah, I do love that visual, man. That was interesting.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. It's fun playing around with data and just trying to kind of make stats more digestible for everybody and very easy, quick and easy to just kind of know what you're looking at and understand the value in it and just appreciate the process of visualizing data like that. So thanks for the shout. And yeah, I mean the scouting process is better. Like most things, the more communication that you do with everyone involved, from getting to know the players to getting to know the scouts and the evaluation process that goes through the actual teams. And one last point is on the big board and consensus. Totally agree that it's almost like I kind of view it like everyone has a different board. You have your own board. The consensus board can and the communicating can help you form your own. And what's important to me is that like the actual, if you just have a general big board, that's nice for like the ESPN draft to know, like if you don't know anyone that's available, who's left. But in terms of a team, like every team is going to have their own big board. Like they're going to value different like players within the same tier differently. And that's where, like, for instance, if I have a tier of 3 through 12, well, I have Wolf number 3 on there for his upside, but that doesn't mean I think every team should just draft Danny Wolf number 3 overall. Like I said, 3 through 12 could all kind of be in the same tier. Like you could, if you think you need like an offensive guard to really explode your offense, I'm not going to recommend Danny Wolf, obviously, but maybe that's where a Tre Johnson or could come in, or a VJ Edgecombe if you want to go more of a potential route. So every team has their own big board. Every team prioritizes different things to begin with. Every team values different things to begin with. And that just kind of comes down to what we were talking about earlier, that like, because there are so many different evaluations, communicating and understanding as many as you can is important. And then using that information to find value in the draft is how it's done. So if you think there's enough intel to move back 2 spots because your guy's going to be there and you get an extra pick, that's where the value in the trades come in for good draft process. And at the end of the day, if you don't have enough intel and you have the like the Philly with the 3rd pick, and you love a guy, you're not sure if he's going to be there at 6 or 7, you just take him because you got lucky in the draft. So there is definitely interesting. I think the team centric big board is a better kind of draft exercise than just the big board. So I've done like Orlando Magic ones over the years where it's just focused on what this team would do based on what I think they would do, what I think they need, and just how they're kind of building out the team. So just putting an adjustment for the team, I think, can be important to kind of add context as we're talking about with, like we said, that, different guys would thrive in different roles and different situations. And that fit is important for them realizing their potential. And it's more so about, do they have the fit on this roster to have the opportunity and investment from the team to develop their skills, not do they fit in year 1 to make a run for a title as like a 7th man? Are they going to like fulfill their role as a rookie today? I think that's more of like what gets lost is that's more of a football thing. Like in the NFL, you got to plug and play and be ready like day one, or you're out of the league. In the NBA, like they're drafting for potential for guys that might be stars and starters 5 years down the line.
Yeah, I think the draft in the NBA, it's really just getting assets, right? Like you're trying to add assets to your organization. And then I would even add, you talk about like fit or whatever, why a player goes somewhere else or why they land in a different city. It can even be something as trivial as like one team having like 2 or 3 guards from the same agency. And then if they have another guard that's coming in the draft, the agent might be like, well, why would I put my client in the same city and like my clients be kind of fighting against each other to succeed? Like stuff like that. Like we talk about context matters. Like there is so much that goes into the draft, from the intel to the grassroots scene to the college games to a combine, a hoop summit, USA basketball minicamp, the Treviso like abbreviated combine going on right now. Like there's so many different data points, and I think the only thing you can do if you're trying to do it from the media is drop the arrogance, right? Like you don't have it all figured out, because if the best in the world don't have it figured out, you certainly don't have it figured out. So I think it's a really fun exercise, and like you said, like I think hour in on this podcast, I think it's pretty clear you have a love for basketball. We don't know each other, but it seems like what you do is rooted in a love for the game. So I think when you have that deep entrenched root and love for the game, you're able to kind of go through it with, a student lens and a learning mindset, and just trying to, like we said throughout this podcast, gather as much information as possible and try to make an informed prediction, informed decision. Yeah, but no, it's fun. The draft's the best.
Hey, no doubt. Draft season right around the corner. Appreciate the kind words, man. Right back at you. Just nice to connect here and talk a little hoops. So always fun just to talk basketball, especially with someone that understands how it all really works. And a great point on just all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that fans will never know about, that has nothing to do with what you saw on First Take that morning, that where the draft is just just so many different factors and moving parts, and a great point on how much agents really do have pull on decisions with teams, where the relationships between agents and front offices is just as big of a factor as just about anything else with actually what ends up happening. So a great point to give that shout as well. And that's what makes scouting so interesting, because we have the film, we have like the quotes that come out, and you can only do so much you can only use the information at hand, and like teams have a lot more information and they have a lot more access to that information. So you have to like really be on top of either your own reporting or reading others reporting, and on top of the film, just to have a chance of understanding a player. And then beyond that, you don't actually know what's going to happen because of all the, the background moves that happen behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
There it is. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. A little 2025 guards only Swish theory, learning basketball podcast draft. We crushed it. Dylan Harper, congrats, #1 pick in this draft. At least you made it happen. Man, that was a lot of fun. Always fun talking hoops, and just appreciate you taking the time today, Jake. It was really cool hearing your perspective and your philosophies, and you obviously put in a ton of work as well. So shout out to you for building League Him and the path that you've been on, and wish you luck. Continue to thrive.
Appreciate it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on your show, and yeah, we're all just trying to learn basketball. I'd close with, we talk about you talk about like the talking heads and like a First Take or whatever. Like last year, the narrative was the draft sucks, right? Like the draft's weak. What pick did Jalen Wells go? 37th, like, right? Like that's why we love the draft. And there's always going to be beauties in the eye of the beholder. There's always hidden gems. So even I would say with people that are starting to romanticize and dramatize the second round of this year's draft with all the withdrawals, guys will always emerge. Not everyone's on the same trajectory. Not all information is public on the character of these guys or the drive. And, these are human beings. It is impossible to project human beings, but it's certainly fun to try. But yeah, thanks for having me on your show. You guys are killing it. Happy we connected, and hopefully we talk soon.
No doubt, man. Definitely love to do it again sometime. Appreciate you taking the time. And draft season's right around the corner. NBA Finals this week. What a time to be alive. Basketball is in the heat of it. And thanks again, man. It's a lot of fun. Have a good one, Jacob.
Yes, sir.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.